Thanks so much for coming today, guys. Everybody having fun so far? Yeah, awesome. First time at Anime North for me. Anybody here also first time Anime North? Okay, awesome. I'm not alone. Oh, sweet. Thank y'all so much for coming. Welcome to Creating Voices. My name is Josh Grelle. I'm a voice actor for FUNimation Entertainment, ADV Films, Sentai Filmworks, OkraTron 5000, Cup of Tea Productions, Sony Entertainment, all sorts of stuff. Just long names. I've been working in the industry doing voice work professionally for about 15 years now. I started just around 2004. And this is pretty much the only thing that I've done since I've graduated high school. And there's one thing that I've noticed a lot of over the years, especially as more and more people and this newer generation of young fans that are coming into anime and discovering it and kind of discovering their passions through finding anime, especially a lot of people who are very interested in the process of dubbing or doing voice work or just being actors or voice actors in general. And I find that a lot of people don't do it very smart or safely. There's a lot of videos and YouTube stuff out there, especially of people trying to give tips and tricks on how to do voices and create certain things, and very rarely do I ever find one that actually gives good advice or safe advice. So I started doing this panel to try and fix that. If you thought that I was going to be teaching you the next hour how to do a good Cartman, that's not what this panel's about. While imitations are fun and you can absolutely do it, in fact, I encourage you to do imitations of your favorite characters because that is one way that you learn what your voice is capable of. I would never try to teach you to do those, first off, because the way that I do it is not necessarily gonna be that you do a voice. And secondly, because imitations don't necessarily help you when it comes to this job, and I'll get to that in a little bit. Throughout the panel, I try to cover a full 45 minutes with the stuff I want to talk about. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I finish a little early. If at any point you have a question about something I'm talking about, something's not necessarily clear, feel free to just shoot your hand right up. I will call on you as soon as I take a breath. And if you don't mind, we do have these two microphones set up that you are welcome to go up to, and you can ask your question that way. So if I see you stand up and go to a microphone, I will stop talking and give you a chance to ask your question for everybody. Everybody cool with that? Yeah. We good? Sweet. And please, if you don't mind, go use the microphones instead of just raising your hand, because sometimes I'm really hard at hearing. It also comes from years of working in the booth, having people scream in your ears. So if you don't mind, they're just lonely microphones. They just want a friend. To be their friend. So, first off, creating voices. How many of you, first and foremost, are interested in becoming voice actors? Okay, keep your hands up. How many of you, out of those of you who want, have had any sort of theater experience? Awesome. I love seeing that. Okay, those of you that kept your hands up, you're already ahead of the game. You're already on the right track if this is something that you want to do. For those of you who are interested, highly, I cannot stress enough, become an actor first. I started doing theater when I was 5 years old. Wow. I did not stop until I graduated high school, and because of that, I think, and I wasn't some great, young genius actor or anything like that, but just because I had those first few years of experience under my belt, I already at the very least had the basic knowledge of what was needed for me to be able to perform with my voice behind a microphone, and that really helped me in getting noticed and getting my foot in the door at places like Funimation, and that's one of the reasons why I feel like they've kept using me for as long as they have. So please, I cannot stress enough, if you're in high school right now or in college, and if your school offers any sort of acting classes, take them. Not everybody is lucky enough to have that. I didn't have an acting class available to me in any of my schools in my hometown. I grew up in a little podunk town in the middle of nowhere, Texas. We had 3,000 people in our town, My graduating class was 75 people. And unless you played football or went in bands, nobody cared about you. There was no theater, there was very little art or anything like that in my hometown. But thankfully, if you don't have that resource, I guarantee you there's community theater somewhere in your area, which is where I learned. I did from 5 years old to graduating high school, I did everything in just community theater. It is a great learning tool. So, you have that. Let's say you're interested in either becoming a voice actor sub-professionally, doing kind of stuff that I do, or you like to create your own stuff for like YouTube or anything like that, and you want to get good at creating good quality voices for yourself. You can do it at home, and it's awesome that way. In fact, I recommend doing it at home because if you do it in public, people look at you like you're crazy. I don't know why, but being at home is one of the best ways to do it. Not only that, just because like anybody who's ever, like me, I don't like singing in public. I get very, nervous doing that at first, but when I can do stuff at home, like singing at home, I'm a lot more comfortable, and like I don't clench up or anything like that, which is actually really bad for your voice if you're, clenched up and doing stuff like that and then trying to perform. It's not very healthy. So like being in a place where you can be 100% comfortable and relaxed is key. So do it at home, do wherever. First thing, before you even make your first little sound, you want to have lubrication near you at all times. We will be calling this lubricant the rest of the class. First rule. Lubricant. Thank you. So, point of fact, really important thing. Reason why we do water. No sodas, no coffee, no tea. Tea is only used if you are using it to heal your throat. Just do water. If you are working or if you are just practicing, water is the go-to. Do it room temperature if you can. Do not do hot, especially not like scalding hot, like coffee hot or anything. Room temperature, a little warm, a little cold is okay. You do not want hot and you do not want ice cold. Can anybody tell me why that is? No, Sean. Shoot, go ahead.
Like numb on your lips?
Numb? No. Though that is a good thought. Yes? Yes. Cold water restricts. Hot water, while it can relax, might relax a little too much. And especially if it's too hot, then you're hurting your cords. Like they will react kind of like shock, like what you said. So yeah, room temperature is usually the preferred. Straight from a faucet or just a bunch of bottled water that you have sitting around in your room or something. Keep it there. Drink this and have it with you throughout the entire session. If you run out of water, do not do anything else until you go back and get more and you have it on hand. All right. Second rule, warm up. Anybody know some vocal, like anybody ever done anything that requires you to do a vocal warm up before, like singing or choir or anything like that? Okay, cool. So, and I'm assuming like if you've done singing or if you're familiar at all with the concept of vocal warm-ups, you've probably heard of the regular one of, doing the bars, doing your musical notes and, through a progression. Da 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 da. Da 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 da, and stuff like that. You don't actually have to do that for vocal warm-ups, especially when it comes to voice work, because that's not going to warm up the part of your voice that you need to use in order to create voices. It's a very different vocal and technical difference in the way that you use your voice when singing as compared to performing or doing voices. So I'm going to teach you right now my favorite vocal warm-up. Ian Sinclair, who's a really good friend of mine, you might know him as the voice of Space Dandy, is also the voice of Whis from Dragon Ball Super and all sorts of other crazy fun stuff. He showed me this, and it's the one that I've used for almost a decade now. And this vocal warm-up helped me do the very first episode of Attack on Titan as young little kid Armin. The day after I had had a night filled with a bachelor party for a friend of mine. There was drinking, there was everything. Like I was doing everything the wrong way in terms of making sure that my voice was okay. And this vocal warm-up plus some other concoctions, which I will also tell you about near the end of this, made it so that I could sound like this the next morning. And after sounding like this when I was going to bed. So it's very, very important. So I want you to imagine the alphabet, starting at A, going to Z. We're going to take out all of the vowels, A, E, I, O, U. So we're left with the rest of the alphabet without the vowels. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take each vowel, starting with A, and we're going to add that to the end of every single letter. And we're going to go through and say that. So when you're saying it, it will sound like this, starting with B with the letter A. Bay, 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 say, 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 day, 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 day. And you will go through the entire alphabet like that. And then once you get to Z, zay, 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 you go back to B, and then you grab I, and now we go bye, 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 sigh, 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 die, die, die. Now you're awake. So you will go through that, and so practice it with me. We're gonna start with A, okay? Starting with B. You ready? Bay, 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 say, 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 day, 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 fay, 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 gay, 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 gay. I see you giggling. Everybody giggles at the G. Everybody giggles. I love it. So yeah, it's just kind of like that. And now there's a very important thing that you're doing. There is a reason why we are doing this. Everybody, guys, take 2 fingers, girls as well, take 2 fingers. Very gently, guys, put your finger on either side of your Adam's apple if it sticks out. Girls, keep them close together, just very gently, kind of on your vocal cords. And now, let's do that again, starting with B. And I want you to feel for a constant, never-ending vibration, okay? Bay, 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 say, 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 day, 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 fay, 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 fay. You feel it? You feel that vibration in there? Okay. What that's doing, and the reason for this is because that constant little vibration, and it's not, you notice we're just speaking in a normal tone, we're not putting a lot of energy behind it, we're not whispering or anything, just a very calm, very natural progression or projection of these words, and it's not uncomfortable, is it? It's just a very natural feeling. So that vibration is getting loose all the gunk that's built up on your coat. If after sleeping all night, or if you've got some allergies or anything like that, just doing this warm up is going to help you loosen up a lot of that stuff. And that's going to block you and keep you from necessarily doing the types of voices that you want, reaching the right pitches that you want, and God forbid, actually hurting your voice. Like, getting rid of that will really help. So you should do A, E, I, O, U, all through the alphabet, all the way through. This is not a race. The point is not to do it as fast as you can. The point is to do it correctly. It should take you roughly half an hour if you're doing it at a very slow pace, especially when you're first starting out. The point of it also is and there's no way that I can really explain it to you. This is something you have to feel and figure out for yourself. Some of you are going to have more trouble with certain sounds than others doing that vocal warm-up. For me, for instance, I have a very hard time doing Q. So for the word Q, you have to do a qua sound. And part of this warm-up also is to make sure that you're also loosening your lips. So you want to make sure that whenever you are saying stuff, you are moving your mouth in almost an exaggerated fashion. So when I would do Q, I would say quay, 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 quay. And it looks ridiculous, and trust me, I've done it on the way to the studio on the highway and gotten some weird looks. But do it, you gotta do it. But moving your mouth in more exaggerated ways, it's not only going to help you make sure that you're pronouncing it as correct as possible, because you're going to help with your enunciation while you are doing this. It's also going to make it so much easier when you actually start doing the voices, or if you're recording something, you won't have any mouth noises, you won't have any of the, smacky stuff, you're not gonna have that gunky sound or anything like that. But certain words are going to be hang-ups for some of you, and it's going to be, trial and error on each of your cases. Just be aware that that's probably going to happen. Another hard one that I had was X. X is interesting because you actually just say X. So I would say XA, 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 XA. And while, of course, like I said earlier, when you're first starting out, the point is to do it correctly. But eventually, you want to get to the point where you can say XA, 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 or quake, 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 and say it as quickly, not necessarily as quickly, but just as efficiently as possible. You don't need to race through, but being able to say them quickly and cleanly is the end goal. Any questions so far? Nope. Awesome. Yes. You don't have to. I mean, if you want to go to the mic, sure, but you're close enough that I could hear you.
Did you come up with this as like an industry standard warm-up?
No, Ian Sinclair taught me this this particular warm-up. I don't know if it's like an industry standard or anything. Generally, you'll find that there's no such thing as an industry standard when it comes to warm-up and acting techniques and stuff like that. Generally, it's there's so many different schools of thought when it comes to acting and performance, and the better ways to do it. People are always trying to find new ways to warm up or new ways to do things. This is just the one that I feel is most conducive to voice work. So this is the one that I recommend. If you find one that works better for you, then do that. Okay, any other questions? Yes?
So I'm wondering, who would you like karaoke, for example? Does it really help them? Because it's more singing than...
I don't know. I don't think this would necessarily help for anything like karaoke. Probably not. Yeah, singing and voice work are kind of, there's two different ways that you use your voice and your throat and your mouth and everything whenever you're singing as compared to doing voice work. So the warm-ups wouldn't necessarily help each other, I don't think. Feel free to try it. Yes?
Just a follow-up. What about theater?
For theater, yeah, I think that would help a lot. Because on theater, being able to be understood by the audience, especially people way in the back without a microphone, you need to be able to enunciate as cleanly as possible. You need to be able to project as cleanly as possible and not have that gunky sound or anything in there so that people can understand what you're saying. So yes, this could help a lot for theater. So remember, yes, ma'am.
If you were to do this in sessions, how many times a day do you recommend to do it? Like, would you do it like once a day or twice a day?
Usually just once a day. That's enough to, because especially if you have like multiple sessions in a day, like you were saying, you'll do it before your first session. And then once you've warmed up, actually doing the job keeps you warmed up for the rest of the day. So then if you have a break between stuff, I actually would suggest after warming up, doing a recording, and then you have a break before your next recording, don't talk during that break. It's actually better to just kind of get some lunch, get something, like some sort of broth, like a soup or something for lunch. Like if you're a fan of pho or ramen or something like that, get one based. But if you go the ramen route, try to avoid anything that's made with bone for the broth. So like a tonkatsu broth or something, because that's going to be a lot more milky. And the milkiness, it kind of has the same effect as like drinking milk or having cheese or something before doing it. That's another thing. Don't ever do, like I said, don't ever do soda or anything like that. Drink-wise, don't ever have milk or eat cheese or any sort of dairy before you do, because it has the same effect. Like milk and dairy of any kind causes mucus buildup, and that will potentially coat your vocal cords and could hurt you while you're recording. So yeah, avoid that as well. But yeah, get something like a very clean broth, like a shoyu broth or something like that, or a pho, and keep drinking the water. And then once you're done with everything for the day, then you can have a soda or something like that. But yeah, other than that, don't have it. I didn't actually explain why not to have a soda, did I? No? Okay. Because of the sugar and because of the caffeine. Caffeine, also the reason why no coffee or tea. Caffeine dries you out. It will make you, it makes it much easier for your throat to get hurt. Again, because then you'd have to just be drinking twice as much of this to make sure that your voice stays lubricated. First rule? Second rule? No, warm up. Warm up. Pay attention. Warm up is the second rule. All right. So, any other questions before we move on? No? All right, cool. And remember, you don't have to wait for me to stop talking to raise your hand. If at some point you just hear me say something, you're like, that doesn't make sense, then just raise it. Just tell me. Okay, so you're at home. You've done your warm-up. You have your lubricant. You are ready to start making your own voices. The first thing that I would absolutely recommend, again, while you're first starting out, try not to do anything super strenuous. Try not to do anything that, like a Cartman or a Bart Simpson or a Hello Kitty or something like that. Like these things that cause you to have to go like either strain your voice or add a texture to your voice in order to get it out. Like does anybody not understand what I mean when I say texture? Texture? Okay. So do you have a question, sir? No. Oh, you were just letting me know? All right, cool. So texture, let's say Gollum. Everybody knows Smeagol. So, when Smeagol talks normally, everything is just that kind of clean thing. But when he's Gollum, he has that, that very kind of, sound at the back of for everything that he's doing. So, I'm wicked, tricksy, false. Like all that very kind of sound that's in the back there, that's always happening in the back of your throat while you're doing that voice. So please don't start out with anything that's extreme like that, or really high-pitched stuff, or anything along those lines, because you're more than likely to potentially hurt yourself than do yourself any good. So what will you do? Use just your natural voice. And the reason why I really want to try to hammer that into people's heads is because I have seen so many people who were impassioned and in love with this and wanted to do this as a career, completely shoot themselves in the foot and end it all right when they were doing their audition. Because instead of just using their natural voice and following direction, they kept trying to do impressions. They kept trying to show their best Kermit, or their best Cartman, or really just pick any character that, everybody, a meatwad, or something like that. Like people, they are constantly throwing out stuff like that. And the director, I would just see the director trying so hard to keep their cool and just be like, okay, that's a great Cartman. Let me hear your voice. Just show me what you can do. And they had no idea what they were talking about. They had gotten it into their head that this job was all about making funny voices, and it's not. Most of the time, all the roles that I've played over these 15 years, some 300 some odd characters that I've played, most of them, when I try to think of any just off the top of my head that actually required a very funny voice, I can think of 2 immediately off the top of my head. The rest of my voices are either right here in my natural range, something a little bit higher, or something a little bit lower. And that's it. And I've played like 300 some odd characters. What makes those characters feel different is the actual performance, coupled with potentially a dialect or a texture that I put on the voice. Other than that, the pitch, it's one of those 3. That's it. One of the greatest things that I think that anybody can do if they want to get into this is to figure out what your voice sounds like first. Get comfortable with performing with just you, talking as you. And once you figure that out, once you get comfortable with that, then you can start branching into other voices and adding textures and dialects and stuff like that. But until then, just try to talk normally. Yes?
Now, other voice actors, now I watch Critical Role, so such as Travis Willingham, or even Matthew Mercer, they say once you're comfortable with doing voices, they say if you're looking for a voice, you can also think about, well, what's their personality? What's the personality of the voice you want to do?
Absolutely.
So that's the same here?
Yeah, that's what I mean by performance. When I say the character comes out in the performance, that's what I'm talking about, is finding the character's personality. So like, for example, Armin, and I'll get to you in just one second. So for example, Armin Arlert, Attack on Titan. Normally, if I was just doing the pitch, then just talking like this doesn't really do anything. Like that doesn't sound like Armin if you just talk like that. But if I add a little bit of breathiness to it and I start to imagine the fact that Armin is this very frail, kind of not necessarily comfortable with himself, type of, when we first meet him, especially in the first season, I start to think about the fact that he's constantly just like, no, Aaron, we can't do this. Then the voice starts to come out. Like it's just that little bit of like, okay, no, I need to make my body a little bit smaller, because whenever we feel anxious or self-conscious, we tend to make ourselves smaller even if we don't realize it. So I do that with myself. And then you have to have that frailty. So you add a little bit, I'm constantly pushing air over my cords right now as I'm talking. And it's really hard to kind of keep breath that way, but that's Armin's voice. That's how you get there. Another example, also in that pitch, Tyrian Kalos from RWBY. Again, I can just start up here and nothing's really gonna happen. But if I add a little sinister to it, just kind of open the chords this way, and I add a smile. There's always a little smile with Tyrian, and so you can hear the difference, right? Those are two completely separate characters. All I'm doing is affecting my breath, adding a little texture. Armin is more breath, Tyrian is more texture, and that's it. And then just adding the personality, adding the performance, and that's how you create a character. And I feel like that's kind of why I feel like it's so important to just get used to performing with your voice first, because that's what I did with theater for so long. Like, people in theater very rarely, unless you're doing like a comedy or a spaghetti western or something like that, are very rarely going to have to do really kooky or strange voices. Like, it's very much just very natural. This is the way that they perform. But when it comes to voice work, completely different ball game. Yes, what was your question? Yes.
So when you're thinking about just not even looking at television or dubbing that way, when you think about like the radio voice.
Yes.
Right? So when you're going in for auditions, and I know that there's an audition panel later,
Mm-hmm.
but when you're going in for auditions and a director's looking for something, are they necessarily, I know that they're somewhat thinking of the character, at all times, but is there kind of a typecasting? Is there a type of, when you get into the voice, are they looking for a specific type, or are they looking, what are they exactly kind of looking for?
It's always different, and here's the thing, when it comes to commercials especially, the people that make those commercials have no idea what they're looking for. Ever. And a lot of times the directors that they have working for them don't know either, because the director's just there to make sure that you get what the client wanted. And the client doesn't know jack. They don't know what they want, they just know how to sell stuff. And they have this idea in their head of what something's supposed to sound like, and what word in the thing is supposed to be, punched harder to really sell something. And there's always gonna be at least 4 other people, client side, that are all arguing and trying to come up with, no, I think this word should be, is the more important one. What if we added this line? And at the end of it, you just come up with 4 people who have absolutely no idea what they want. And so a lot of the times, when you go in, when you're auditioning, especially for commercial, it's just a roll the dice. I've been doing, ever since I got an agent, commercials have been something that's a little more accessible to me, and I probably do on average 1 or 2 auditions a week for some new commercial, either coming into the Dallas market or that's gonna be all over the US or something. And I maybe average 2 a year.
I don't mean ad commercials.
Okay, ad commercial, just anything. Just the industry. No, there is no one thing that anything in the industry is looking for, except for someone who can, what's up? He's got the Infinity Gauntlet up here and it decided to be angry.
Josh.
Just 1 second, let me finish this thought, and then we'll get your question. The only thing that I would say that universally everyone is looking for in this industry is somebody who is easy to work with, not a drama queen, who can take direction, and who knows their own voice and their own vocal limitations. Does that make sense? All right, cool. Yes.
I have 2 quickies. One, you're gonna be here tomorrow?
Yes.
What time for the signings?
I can't think off the top of my head what time, dude.
Okay, fine. Also, how does one expand their vocal range, especially like post-puberty and stuff?
Yeah, after puberty hits, that's when you'll really know what your voice is going to be like. Expanding your range is interesting. Sometimes I feel like I'm convinced that my range is something that I was able to actually expand. There are some people who think that, no, your voice is just what your voice is going to be, and its capabilities are just something that you have to discover, but they were always there to begin with. I don't think so. I think the voice is more like a muscle. And when you're working out a muscle, eventually it gets stronger and it is able to do more. So I feel like that's the same with your vocal cords. So you have to kind of approach doing voices and expanding your range like you would going to the gym. Do a little bit at a time, and then the moment, so like for me, for example, when I really wanted to make sure that my high range was as clean and as in my control as I possibly could, and I don't recommend this for everybody, this was 16-year-old Josh who didn't know these things now. I listened primarily to and tried to imitate every vocal crazy thing that the lead singer for System of the Down did. And I did it. I was able to do it. It took me years to where I could be like, no, I can absolutely do a Serge Tankian. But like, doing that, I would constantly listen to like just maybe one album. I would have one album on. I had a particular set of songs eventually picked out where I was like, there we go. I had several songs picked out that specifically he was doing really crazier, over the top vocal tricks that I specifically was just like, I really like that. I want to be able to do that. And so I would just do those songs every day. I would sing them in the car. I would sing them at home. I would, and try to imitate those things. But then the moment that my voice started to hurt, and this is the important thing, you stop. Because just like going to the gym, if you just keep on pumping iron and your arm is tired and hurting and crawling out, and you keep on doing it, what are you going to do? You're going to hurt the hell out of yourself. Same with your voice. Once it starts to hurt or you feel a tightness, even a little bit of tightness right in here, stop what you are doing immediately. Drink your water and don't talk for at least an hour. When I say don't talk, I mean don't make a sound. Because it's just stop talking. And that's another thing too with this industry, vocal rest, and I'll get to that in a second. So, was there any more to your question?
No, that's it. I'll see you tomorrow then.
Cool, man. Thank you. So, hang on. Yes, we have you in the back.
What do you suggest when you hurt your throat?
Remedies when you hurt your throat? I'll get there in just a second.
I was gonna say, like, on expanding vocal range.
Uh-huh.
I watched like a couple of voice actors do this check where they got like pictures in front of them where they're watching characters.
Uh-huh.
Just made up ones.
Yeah.
And they would try to like make a voice for that.
Okay.
Try to expand their range, whether it be like just a normal like high tone, low tone range, or just
Uh-huh.
like regular.
Okay. I think that would work wonderfully, actually, yeah. So she was saying that she watched a thing with a bunch of professional voice actors that were in a room and people were pulling up different cards that had different animated character designs on them, different crazy, kooky-looking things, and the voice actors would try to come up with the voice for that character kind of on the spot, just based off of how they looked. And she was wondering if that could be a good way for practicing vocal stuff. And I think, yeah, absolutely. But you would have to figure out some way if you're at home by yourself, like come up with some sort of randomized slideshow of just random images that you haven't seen before. So you can do that. I would argue that that's something that would probably be better left suited once you've been doing it for a while, and you know your own range and your capabilities. Yes.
You said that T is only used for yelling.
Yes.
Used for yelling your voice. I've heard other voice actors say honey is another good one.
Yeah, and then actually, you know what? Since we've got so many asking about it, I'll just go ahead and talk about it now. So let's say that you have you've been practicing at home. You hurt yourself. You're doing a little too much. You start to feel that tightness, and you take your break and everything, but just a little bit too late. You find out later down the road. You figure out, oh, it's still hurting. I might have actually done something wrong. Here's what you do. Vocal rest immediately. When I mean vocal rest, it's the continuation of not making a sound. And you can happen, the longest that I've gone on vocal rest was 4 or 5 days without making a sound, without talking, without anything. My wife and I communicated through whistles and mouth farts. Means yes, means no. And I mean, it's just the way you have to do it. And while you're on vocal rest, here are the things that you can drink. Easiest to get, some black tea. Make it, you want to brew it, obviously, but you don't need to go boiling for it or anything. Make sure that you don't want it to be super, super hot. Black tea with a little bit of lemon and a little bit of honey. Local honey, always. Whenever you are doing honey for your throat, always use local because it's going to have the local allergens in it that your body is used to, and that will help as well. Another thing that you can do is, like I said, also soups and different broths and stuff like that, also very good because not only are those going to help clean your throat and help soothe it, but they're usually filled with protein, which is also going to help you recover quicker. Third one, and this is the one I only recommend if you are working or you have to go and you're either working in the industry or you have hurt your voice while practicing at home and you about to have to go to work, and if your work requires you to talk, this is what's going to help you do it. It's a Houston Opera House remedy called fart juice. And you will fart a lot. You take a regular party cup, plastic party cup, you fill it to the first little line with orange juice with pulp. You need the pulp in it. Do not do it from concentrate if you can. Just pure orange juice with pulp. A tablespoon or more of Bragg's all-natural unfiltered apple cider vinegar. Put that in there, and then honey. You mix it up, and you shoot it every hour on the hour until you can talk like normal. I know I've heard Houston opera singers that had bronchitis, had to go and perform at night, drank that every hour on the hour for a day, and then they went that night and they performed like they had not been sick in their lives. It is really potent, very awesome stuff. That's the concoction that I also drank the day that I went and did Young Armin, the first day after the bachelor party the night previously. Fart juice saved my career. So yeah, it's good stuff, but it will give you horrendous gas. You will blow up your room, you will blow up the house, your car, everything. There's been a couple of sessions where after I've had to use fart juice to go in, I've left a few surprises for whoever was going to be in the booth after me. And there's no ventilation in those booths. There's just cold air coming in. There's no air going out. So it just festers. But yeah, it is very, very helpful. So those are some good concoctions that you can use. Chicken noodle soup is a great, that's kind of the go-to for any sort of, ailment. It works for vocal rest as well. But yeah, the biggest, most important part is the fact that you just do not talk. And I mean, if you're gonna whisper to somebody, you might as well just talk normally. Because whispering is going to actually cause more damage than just talking while you're on vocal rest. If you absolutely must communicate while you're vocal resting, just talk normally. Don't whisper. Okay. Yes.
Have you ever had a time where you had to postpone or cancel something because you were on vocal rest?
Yeah, there were times where, there's been plenty of times where I've had to cancel sessions or get stuff rescheduled, and there's been times where I absolutely had to turn down a role at the last second that I really wanted because I got sick. Actually, last year, just before this con, I was at ASIN, and one person came in line for an autograph and was sick as a dog and told me right after they had gotten a picture with me and put themselves all over me that they were sick. And I went home, and within a couple of days, I thought I had the flu. It actually ended up not being the flu. It was just like a very chronic bronchitis. But it knocked me down that's why I couldn't come to Anime North last year. And while I was recovering, I missed out on 4 auditions, 2 of which would have paid my bills and my mortgage for 6 months if I had gotten them. I'm talking, these were national level they were going to be shown in everywhere in the U.S. These were like for big car companies or really big food, like very popular like food brands and stuff like that. I would have been able to live comfortably I would have been able to pay all my bills for 6 months if I had gotten that. And I couldn't do it because one person came in line and got me sick. I had to turn down several roles. There was a role that someone offered me a lead in an anime down in Houston. I had to turn them down because they absolutely had to get it done right then. There was no way I could do it. So I mean, it's like, yeah, you have to be as diligent and as careful as you possibly can when it comes to your vocal cords and your health. Sometimes you can't help but get sick, but when this is your only job, getting sick can be the difference between paying your bills 1 month and being homeless the next. It's not for everybody, so be forewarned. Any other questions? Yes, Link.
I tried to ask this earlier, but you told me to come to this.
Yes.
I'm not sure if you talked about it before, but I was wondering how you broke into the voice acting industry.
I will get to that. Hang on, how much time have we got left? Oh God. Okay. Cool. 1 second. All right. So I will get to that in just 1 second. There's one thing I do want to cover very, very importantly here. So, you have your lubricant. First rule. What's the second rule? You've warmed up. You're at home. You've been practicing just with your regular self and everything. And here's one way that you can do that. Because a lot of people tell me, but like, I don't know like what to do or what to say when I'm doing voices. And it's like, and I get that. That's very important. You need to have some form of script or just something that you can read. Because if you're also trying to do voices while trying to improv dialogue, your brain is split into too many different places. You need to be able to just focus on speaking and doing the voice. So what can you do? Just pull up something online, pull up like a novel, grab your favorite book. If you really want to practice something cool, practice sight reading, because that's 99% of this job. We don't see the scripts until we go in and record them. I didn't see the first episode, the script for Yuri on Ice until 5 minutes after I stepped into the booth ready to record it. It's like, this is the way it happens. You will almost never, especially for dubbing, you will never, ever, ever get the script beforehand. So you need to become very good at not only performing with your voice, you need to be able to perform with it while sight reading. And if you've done band or anything, you know sight reading is basically just playing something without ever having seen it. It's the same with acting. So another thing that you can do to practice that is just pull up a random, type in Google and just click on a random news thing and start reading it. Just try to read it out loud as if you have read it 1,000 times and perform it with confidence. When you can get to that point, then you're ready to start doing dubbing. So you've done all that, and now you want to try and get into doing textures and adding dialects and stuff like that as well to your voices. And dialects are a little tricky. I found one of the best ways to do dialects is not to just try to imagine what that dialect is, and don't learn your dialect from a cartoon character. Don't learn your dialect. Don't learn Scott from Uncle Scrooge. Because, except for the new Uncle Scrooge, because he actually is Scottish. So, that's probably a good one to learn from. But the original Uncle Scrooge, no. Scots people will look at you like, what the hell are you doing? There's a really amazing online resource. I think it's just called the Global Dialect Database, or just Dialect Database. If you type that into Google, it should be one of the first things that come up. They have this great library of thousands of native speakers from all over the world speaking English, so you can hear what their dialect would sound like speaking your native language. And not only do they come from just every country, every individual place within that country. They have every individual dialect in England. Every single one, every single Irish dialect, every regional Scottish dialect, every regional Japanese dialect. It's just, if you want to learn a dialect, that is the place to do it. Dialect Database, look it up, amazing resource. Texture, on the other hand, is something that you kind of have to play with and learn yourself. Like the stuff that I was talking about, imitating Serge Tankian and everything. Texture is something that you really just kind of have to experiment with yourself, unfortunately. That's not really anything that I don't think that I can help you with on that front. But the thing I can help you on is performance, and that's where the vast majority of your character voice is actually going to come from. And again, the best thing to do for that is to become an actor. But while you're doing that, playing pretend is something that I think everybody is good at in some form or fashion. Does everybody in here have a good imagination or fancies themselves as having a good imagination? Just imagining what your character, and it can even be an OC, like use an original character or something. If there's anybody who writes or draws or something, you know what that character is supposed to sound like. Play around with it. Create characters. Come up with like a big towering orc or something, and try to figure out what he's going to sound like. Another thing that you can do to help differentiate your voice a little bit and create even better characters is to use your body while you're recording. Like, you don't ever want to keep your mouth away from the microphone or anything, because then you're not going to record. But learn to stay stationary with your face, but still doing crazy stuff with your body, and you'll be able to make some amazing sounds. So many of the Dragon Ball, cool, thank you. So many of the Dragon Ball fight stuff that you have to do or whatever, we're constantly moving around and flailing in the booth. I have to very often, if you're ever taking a punch, I actually will clench myself and push air out and stuff like that, and that can actually kind of create the sound of impact, or at the very least an excerpt of some kind. If you want to learn to laugh, does anybody want to learn how to do an evil villain laugh like Tyrian? All right. There's a very cool thing. It's actually very easy. It's all about breath control. And this is another really important thing. Everybody get a straight posture. Sit up straight in your chair. What we're going to do is you're going to take in a breath, and you're going to try to hold it in your chest, and you want to use the muscles of your stomach, your diaphragm, to push out the air that you're holding in quick little bursts. So it's going to sound like this. Ha, 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 ha. We're just going to do something very simple like that, all right? You ready? All right, let's do it with me. Ha, 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 ha. Awesome, perfect, perfect, perfect. All right, now, speed it up. You ready? We're going to just do a little bit. We'll go ha, 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 ha. You ready? Right, 1, 2, 3. Ha, 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 ha. All right, awesome. We're getting there. Now, texture. You're going to, and here's the other thing, this is going to be a little more complicated. Texture, if you want to, if it feels comfortable. I don't want anybody to hurt themselves, but the other thing we're going to do is what I call the roller coaster. It is a visual aid that I've used to help myself in order to, if I want a very specific read, and I can't necessarily get it to come out naturally, but I know, no, I want the end of the line to end on a high note rather than a low note. So I will say the line while using my hand in kind of like a roller coaster motion. And I'll do that with laughs as well. So if I wanted to with Tyrian, I could do and something like that. You should be able to just control it at any pitch, any speed, whatever, whenever you want to, and that's going to come with practice. So, but just for now, what we're going to do is a start low, end high, okay? So it'll be a all right? And if you need to get a breath between the two before we go, that's fine as well. All right, you ready? Take your breath. Awesome, way to go, guys. You just did a villain laugh. And that's something you can practice. That's just do all sorts of crazy stuff with it. Another thing is, the great thing about doing voices is nothing has to be coherent either. There's times where I'm sitting at home and I'm just making random kooky noises that are scaring the hell out of my dog. You just to be able to do stuff like that, because being able to do little bitty creatures or something, you want to be able to have little bitty or little munchkin sounds or anything like that. You want to be able to just kind of just play. And that's really the most important part, the most fun part of this, is we all wanted to do something that I think felt like playtime for us, you know what I mean? Whether that's drawing, writing, acting, anything, this is a way to just really feel creative and like something other than yourself. sometimes. And really that's one of the, I think, the greatest gifts that acting can give people is this ability to step out of yourself for a small bit of time and completely embody someone else. It's one of the most enlightening experiences I think anybody can have while they're alive. And I really hope that this is something that you all can do. Now for you, sir, breaking into the industry, that is something that it comes down to, like I said earlier, for this one person was asking, is there something that everybody's looking for in the industry, like a typecast type thing? And that, I'll say it again, they're looking for someone who knows their own limitations, knows their own voice, what they can do, someone who can take direction, and someone who is easy to work with. Someone who's not a drama queen that's not full of themselves or anything like that, just a decent person. And I think it's actually pretty easy to be all of those things. They just take practice, especially the learning your own limitations in your voice. Other than that, it's about where you live, where the work that you want to do is, and whether or not, and a little bit of luck. There's always that little bit of luck. Like for me, I got into this because just before I graduated high school, a buddy of mine who lived in Austin that I knew because of a friendship that we had online from liking anime, he went to high school with a girl that worked for ADV Films back in the day on Nadia Secret of Blue Water, if anybody knows or even remembers that title, and gave me their phone number. And by getting that, I just called them up and I said, hey, I'm a young actor. I've been doing this for about 12, 13 years or something at this point, and I really want to continue this. Voice work is really interesting to me. Can I come in for an audition? And they put me on a list, and 6 months later, I got my shot, and I didn't miss. And the reason I didn't miss is because I had all that experience prior, and I'd been practicing and doing all these things. So I know that it's not necessarily what a lot of people want to hear, but it's going to take a little time to get to the point where I feel like you'd be able to audition with all of that, with that same level of knowledge and experience in towards yourself and your own abilities. If you feel like you are confident enough that you can try it now, go for it. I would just be prepared if they don't think that you're ready yet. Some studios just will write you off because all you've done then is waste their time because you didn't know your own abilities. But there are some that will, also say, if you then ask them, okay, I'm not ready, where would you say that I go in order to get ready, or where you would think I'm ready? Usually people will at least give you that much. So, and then the same goes for finding an agent. Finding an agent is just as hard as getting is the same thing as getting an audition. Like, you have to have your resume, you have to have your demos ready and have them professionally made. Do not make something at home with a crappy microphone and try to mix it in Audacity or something like that. It's not, they can tell. Spend $500, $600 to get a good demo made, and it will last you for years. That's pretty much it, man. Other than that, it's all up to you. There's no one way in other than that. Like, those are just the nice little tidbits of, the things you're going to have to get through like everybody else does. But other than that, it's a crapshoot, man. Good luck. This is like, we've got 1 minute left. Let me see if I can put like one question in. Yes?
General equipment do you normally need to start producing work at home?
General equipment for starting work at home. Generally a nice, there's actually a microphone that I use for all of my auditions and just recording fun stuff at home. It's the Razer Siren. I highly recommend it. It's not the cheapest home microphone, but it is definitely more affordable than most like professional studio quality stuff. So while you're practicing, and even as long as you have a decent setup at your home in terms of soundproofing, and you can do that just by getting egg crate from Walmart and plastering it on the walls, cover every open space on your walls or in your closet, wherever you set your booth up. Yeah, say that again?
Feather boas.
I don't know if a feather boa would be, like, maybe it might help a little bit, but like mostly just egg crate, something, or a very thick blanket that you can put up on the wall, one that you don't use if you don't mind nailing it in or something to help with the sound. If you have that, a Razer Siren is about all you need for a long time. So that's generally pretty good equipment. And the good thing about the Razer Siren is you don't have to worry about getting any sort of extra equipment like a preamp or anything like that. It is literally a USB plug and play. Thank you. All right, I'm sorry. I know you had some other questions. I don't have the time for them. Thank you so much for coming. I hope you learned something.